"He's a criminal. Step aside or we'll take you in too," the officer shouted while restraining a heavily tattooed man, but she stood between them, arms outstretched, eyes unwavering. "You lay one hand on him again, and I'll make one phone call." Just one. The police hesitated, but eventually backed off. The next morning, 20 Hells Angels bikers roared into town, followed by 2 military escort vehicles, without a word. Type respect if you believe not everyone with tattoos is frightening, and not everyone in uniform represents justice. Jessica Hart, 34, was an elementary school teacher in Hope Ridge, a small southern town with very clear ideas about who's a good person. She was gentle, had grown up on military bases because her father was a Marine, lost during a mission when she was 12 years old. She once promised, "If I ever see someone misunderstood with the same look in their eyes as my dad, I'll stand up for them." One late afternoon, she witnessed police officers subduing a Hells Angel biker next to the pharmacy. 3 officers pinning the man down, pressing his head against the sidewalk. That man was Cody Wrench Malone, over 40, known as a violent troublemaker, out of prison for just a year. Everyone avoided him. But that day, Jessica saw something unusual. Cody wasn't resisting. He whispered, "I didn't do anything, just buying medicine for my mother." And in those bloodshot eyes was the same resignation she'd seen in her father's eyes during his final leave. She approached, shouting, "Stop! You have no warrant, no reason to assault someone like this." The lead officer growled, "He's a biker. We suspect contraband. Suspicion isn't evidence." An officer extended his arm to push her away. She stepped back but maintained eye contact, saying something that made the entire group pause. "I grew up among officers with honor. You're disgracing the uniform." They left, not because of her, but because someone was filming. But Cody was released. Before leaving, he simply nodded and said, "You just saved me," in a way no one ever has. The incident happened outside Wilson's Pharmacy, the only drugstore in town that carried the specific heart medication Cody's mother needed. Jessica had been grading papers at the coffee shop across the street when she heard the commotion. The officers had stopped Cody as he exited the pharmacy, immediately demanding to search his saddlebags. Despite his cooperation, they quickly escalated to physical restraint when he asked to see a warrant. Jessica recognized one of the officers. Officer Daniels had spoken at her school's career day just weeks before, talking about community policing and respect. The disconnect between those words and his actions now struck her deeply. As she watched the officers retreat to their cruisers, Jessica felt the stares of other townspeople, some confused, others angry. A woman pulled her child closer as Jessica passed. The pharmacy owner quickly locked the door, avoiding eye contact. Back home in her small bungalow, Jessica called her mother, who still lived on base in another state. "You did what your father would have done," her mother said simply when Jessica recounted the event, voice shaking. Jessica slept poorly that night, wondering if she'd jeopardized her career. Hope Ridge was a town where reputations mattered, where stepping out of line carried consequences. The school principal had already texted, "We need to talk tomorrow." But beneath her anxiety was a certainty that she'd done the right thing. In her father's last letter before his final deployment, he'd written, "Always stand up when others sit down, even when your knees shake." Her knees had definitely been shaking today. The video of the incident spread online, shared rapidly. Teacher confronts police brutality to save biker. The town divided into 2 camps. One side called her a traitor, biker sympathizer, out of control. The other side noticed Cody's eyes in the video. Not a violent man, but someone who had been crushed. Jessica received anonymous, threatening letters. Her teaching contract was temporarily suspended, but she had no regrets. "I'm not defending bad people. I'm defending those who have no one on their side if they truly haven't done wrong." Meanwhile, Cody, the scarred biker, quietly left town the next morning. But he didn't disappear. That evening at an old decommissioned military base, a private meeting took place. Unannounced, no cameras. The next morning, engine roars echoed down Hope Ridge's main boulevard. 20 Harley-Davidsons entered town. Hells Angels bikers in pristine uniforms, riding in pairs. Behind them were 2 military escort vehicles, bearing Special Forces insignia. But no one was armed. They didn't speak, didn't stop. They simply rode directly to Jessica's house, stopped and dismounted. The bikers' arrival transformed the quiet morning into something surreal. Store owners stepped outside, some locking their doors as the procession passed. Parents grabbed children, pulling them indoors. Several people began filming from safe distances, though most stayed hidden behind curtains. The local police cruiser parked at Main and Elm discreetly backed away, the officer inside speaking rapidly into his radio. Jessica had been sitting on her porch swing, coffee untouched, reading through hundreds of social media comments about the incident. Some supportive, many vicious. The growing rumble had caught her attention long before the motorcycles appeared around the corner. Her neighbor, Mrs. Clausen, had been watering flowers but now stood frozen, garden hose still running, water pooling at her feet. "Jessica?" she called uncertainly. "Should I call someone?" Jessica slowly stood, setting aside her laptop. "It's okay," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure. The disciplined formation of bikes, gleaming black and chrome in the morning sun, created an intimidating sight. These weren't rowdy riders, but an organized unit moving with military precision. The Special Forces vehicles, unmarked black SUVs with government plates, added an official dimension that confused onlookers. As they parked in perfect alignment along the curb, the silence was striking. No shouting, no revving engines. Just the synchronized shutdown of motors and the synchronized dismounting of riders. Jessica descended her porch steps, hands slightly trembling but chin high. Whatever was happening, she would face it standing. Principal Grayson had called an emergency staff meeting about her situation, scheduled for 10 a.m. She glanced at her watch. She would definitely be missing that meeting now. The local news van screeched around the corner, clearly having received a tip, but they maintained distance, cameraman filming from behind their vehicle. I witnessed it from the coffee shop window, and I swear, I've never seen a silent group make an entire town hold its breath like that. If you've ever wished someone would stand up for the underdog type truth to keep this flame alive. One of the bikers stepped forward, wearing a Marine Corps badge, large in stature but with warm eyes. "Are you Jessica Hart?" "Yes." Cody emerged from the back row, not wearing biker gear, but an old military uniform, faded but neat. "I was a sergeant first class of Special Forces, discharged in 2009. I've been spiraling since then. But yesterday, you looked at me like a human being, not a sentence." From behind, a man in uniform introduced himself. "We're a group of veteran warriors helping those who've fallen from society back into the light. Cody is the first one brave enough to remove his tattoos to return to training." The soldier placed his hand on Jessica's shoulder. "You didn't just save one person. You reminded us that honor isn't in the uniform, but in our actions." One of the military vehicles broadcast over its speaker. "The arrest warrant for Cody Malone has been revoked. Wrongful assessment of violations. Apologies from the State Guard Force." Media was present, but everything happened in silence. Cody approached Jessica, handing her his old military ID card and a letter. "If you agree, I'd like to invite you to be an honorary advisor for our veteran reintegration program. You didn't save a biker. You saved a soldier who wasn't understood." Jessica didn't speak. She simply embraced Cody's shoulders, a hug that didn't distinguish between uniform, biker, or past. The man who had introduced himself was Major James Wilson, founder of Warriors Return, a program operating outside traditional VA channels to reach veterans who had fallen through the cracks of the system. He explained that many ex-military members sought brotherhood in motorcycle clubs after discharge, unable to readjust to civilian life without the structure and camaraderie they'd known in service. When PTSD isn't properly treated, when skills don't translate to civilian jobs, when society sees only the tattoos and not the medals underneath, that's when we lose them, he explained to Jessica and the gathering crowd. The town's sheriff arrived, parking at a respectful distance. He approached cautiously, eyes scanning the group. Major Wilson met him halfway, the two men speaking in low tones. After a moment, the sheriff nodded, returned to his vehicle, and drove away without intervention. Jessica learned that Cody had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before his discharge. The transition had been brutal. Nightmares, flashbacks, inability to hold jobs. The motorcycle club had given him structure when the military abandoned him, but it had also exposed him to influences that eventually led to his imprisonment. Yesterday wasn't the first time those officers harassed me, Cody explained quietly, but it was the first time anyone stood up and said it wasn't right. Jessica examined the letter Cody had given her. It contained testimonials from a dozen veterans whose lives had been rebuilt through the Warriors Return program. Men and women who had gone from homelessness, addiction, and incarceration back to productive lives. The bikers who had accompanied Cody weren't just any Hell's Angels. They were part of a special chapter composed entirely of veterans who used their intimidating appearance to provide security for veteran events and protection for those in the program. The military vehicles belonged to active duty Special Forces members who volunteered with the program, creating a bridge between those still serving and those struggling in civilian life. As word spread through town about what was happening, residents began to emerge from homes and businesses. The initial fear gave way to curiosity, then to something unexpected: respect. An elderly man in a Korean War veteran cap approached the group, saluting Cody. "Welcome home, soldier," he said, voice breaking. A month later, Jessica was invited to speak at the National Veterans Program. The topic, Seeing Beyond the Ink, What Uniforms Don't Say. She began with a single sentence. "I'm not a soldier. I'm just the daughter of a soldier," and someone who recognized that look in the crowd. Cody sat in the front row. No tattoos, no leather, just a small badge on his chest. Redeemed 12th Unit. After her speech, she received an invitation from the Department of Defense to serve as a humanitarian advisor for the Autonomous Veteran Program. The elementary school where she once taught publicly apologized. She didn't go back. But every year on the anniversary of her suspension, the entire biker group visits her home, bringing along those who have just emerged from darkness. No cameras, no singing, just trembling handshakes, and eyes once full of hate, now wet with tears. Sometimes standing up at the right moment doesn't just change one person, it changes everyone who thought they couldn't be believed in anymore. Subscribe to TT Hero Stories if you believe there are warriors who carry no weapons, only faith in humanity. TT Hero Stories, because some heroes never stop serving.